lot for joining us. So first, let me just briefly introduce Olaf. So we have Olaf here, who is the founder and CEO of Polychain Capital. Olaf is the former head of risk at Coinbase, where he was the first employee. And Polychain is one of the world's largest crypto funds that invest in protocols and companies in the blockchain space, advancing the global adoption of cryptocurrencies. Olaf, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, Dawn, thanks for having me.
Great, so let's get started. So Olaf, you have been in the blockchain space for a very long time, essentially one of the earliest people being in the space as well. So now, given what happened in the past, and let's look in the future. So when you think about where blockchain and crypto will be in 5 years, what are the biggest areas of adoption you think we will see?
Yeah, so I have been in this since 2011, and that whole time have spent a lot of time thinking about sort of what's around the corner and what the next exciting kind of use cases will be of this technology. Right now, I'm spending a lot of time definitely thinking about how we can use blockchains to automate not just sort of monetary systems, but also sort of corporate structures. So the ability for humans to coordinate capital and coordinate economic relationships using blockchain-based contracts, I think is very, very powerful. So we're seeing, you know, obviously the kind of bootstrapping of internet-based money with Bitcoin or sort of electronic gold. But I think that there's another thing happening, which is sort of the automation of corporate structures using software. And so this is where, you know, a group of people around the internet, without knowing each other's identities and without agreeing on a specific geography or jurisdiction, can coordinate money and have ownership units that represent sort of a stake in that money, much in the way that corporate shares might represent an ownership in a business. And you can have secondary markets where those ownership units trade and, you know, a group agreed upon use of that capital. And oftentimes these sort of businesses, right, but they're really more like loose internet sovereign organizations, can sort of sponsor or own businesses that are sort of, you know, structured as smart contracts. So a lot of what we're seeing in decentralized finance or DeFi is not just a financial product that's sort of automated with software, but also a sort of human and capital structure that owns and supports that financial product that's also sort of blockchain based and untethered to the world of banking, fiat, and traditional sort of legal entities and geography. And so I do think that, you know, over the next few years, we're going to see many significantly more scalable crypto systems launch. And we're going to see, because of that scalability boost, substantially more complex and interesting sort of corporate and capital structures prop up new types of, you know, blockchain-based products. So I'm excited both for the expansion of sort of blockchain-based applications beyond just finance. Right now, you know, we see a lot of traction with these decentralized financial products, but I think a lot of the reason that we're limited to finance today is the scalability of these low-level systems. And in addition to that, a lot of experimentation around the sort of corporate and capital structure that sort of sponsors these on-chain financial products. So I think that this trend just feels like we are taking corporate structures as well as financial products and making them move at the speed of open source software, instead of making them move at the speed of sort of legacy finance or the speed of, you know, these kind of creation of new types of legal entities is a very slow moving thing. You know, the invention of the C Corp or the limited liability company, there isn't a lot of innovation in that area. And I think that we're going to see over the next 5 years a huge amount of innovation, both in terms of products that can be embedded in blockchains, as well as these sort of on-chain corporate structures that support those products.
That's very interesting. I guess people have been talking about DAOs. So these are things like DAO and potentially further expansions to
yeah,
this kind
exactly. And I think that DAOs were very theoretical for a long time. And now we have multiple billion-dollar DAOs operating today with real financial products and real users. So I think that the amount of traction that we've seen in DeFi is not just due to the automation of financial products, but also due to the automation of the capital structure behind those financial products. And that's sort of the DAO. And so to me, we're seeing two parallel pieces of innovation happening that are sort of feeding on each other, right? There's a very strong feedback loop whereby, these DeFi products are enabled by smarter DAO structures, and these DAO structures are enabled by DeFi products that have product market fit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Right, thank you. And then, so what needs to happen for the blockchain to get to a point of mass adoption then?
Yeah, so I think we're still in sort of the petri dish of experimentation. Most of these products are built for crypto traders or kind of crypto advocates or fanatics. I think that, we need to see better abstractions at the user experience layer for these things to go sort of quote mainstream, right? We need to move off the desktop and onto mobile. We need to do away with things like public key hashes that are scary and, copy pasting keys. We also need better sort of institutional infrastructure. So we need the ability for institutional investors to enter this space. I mean, we've only had, proper licensed crypto custodians for 2 years in the blockchain landscape, right? This whole area is still extremely nascent, and we don't really have the appropriate abstractions for regular users, nor do we have the appropriate tooling for more institutional users. So I think that as both of those mature, we can start to bring all of the great stuff that's been built as kind of science experiments and actually bring those to market, right? And that means a lot of times targeting the right geography and the right use case with the right abstractions such that the end user experience is very simple without having to understand all the nuts and bolts underneath it. It's kind of like in the early days of Bitcoin, it was mostly miners, right? You didn't really have this concept of traders or speculators. Nowadays, people that use Bitcoin, the vast majority of them don't understand how mining works, nor should they have to, right? They sort of can be abstracted away from the nuts and bolts of what makes the system secure or usable and just focus on this sort of investment asset that's Bitcoin. And so I think that a lot of the things being built now are super fascinating in a sort of R&D environment. But to take them mainstream, we need to effectively abstract away all of those nuts and bolts and just bring the end value to the user. Because the end user might just be interested in, a loan or a payment or, escrow or something relatively simple a lot of the time. But we don't yet have the right abstractions to make that easy. So I think that that's one of the major catalysts. And that's just the work of entrepreneurs and technologists. I think it's not that different from the early internet, where you needed to use IP addresses and you needed to use the terminal instead of the browser. And you needed to set up your own SMTP server to use email. Like, the internet wasn't always easy. We didn't always have cloud storage. We didn't always have mobile devices. But now the internet is so easy that you literally can give an infant an iPad and they will learn to navigate it. Obviously, with no mental model for how the internet works or understanding any of the sort of underlying technical, infrastructure. And so in this case, I think we're very far from like the iPad with a child kind of moment for crypto. And those kind of user experience breakthroughs that are the result both of design and technology are, I think, in my mind, the next big catalyst to bring these useful products to the mainstream and actually deliver value to end users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a great point. Thanks. And in order to do that, of course, I guess the blockchain itself also needs to have like greater scalability and some of these other.
I mean, this, I think, is one of the things that makes me really excited about Oasis is both the kind of scalability that you guys have built in, but the other point that I think is very future looking that you guys have been ahead of the curve on is understanding that for a lot of these structures to truly scale and be used by traditional enterprises and corporates, there really needs to be substantially improved privacy. So all of smart contracts today are sort of transparent, and anyone can see who's interacting with them, and anyone can see how they're being interacted with. And that can be useful for sort of analytics and things like that. But if we're ever going to have, a lot of the point of these systems is that, for example, competing competitors or competing even nation states could interact with these systems, much in the way that competing nation states might agree on the value of money, or corporations in different jurisdictions can agree and do commerce together. So I think that adding sort of a privacy layer to a lot of this functionality is critical, in addition to the scalability that we need longer term. And I think that, there's a lot of use cases that Oasis, I think, is particularly well suited for, that I'd love to ask you about, Dawn.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks. Please go ahead. Okay.
Yeah, so I think one for me is where you view privacy as sort of fitting into the long-term sustainability of crypto, or sort of the long-term roadmap of crypto.
Great. Yeah, thanks. And you actually just offered very good answers to this question. Right. So today, crypto mainly is used for crypto enthusiasts and early adopters and so on. But as we want to bring blockchain to the mainstream, just as you mentioned, there are these other entities such as institutions or even governments and so on. For confidentiality, privacy, these are key capabilities that they really need, because they need to protect more about their sensitive information, and they can't just put out that sensitive information on the public, like in the clear text and so on. And hence, and also even as individual users as well, individual users also has a lot of sensitive information. So that's why, for example, for healthcare, for these for individual users, financial data and so on, these all are very sensitive, and we need to provide better privacy protection for users' data, even as they essentially utilize like blockchain applications too. So that's why privacy is really important for the long-term sustainability of crypto. And besides that, also one interesting thing that we have noted also is that, right, so on one hand, for example, Ethereum has full transparency. On the other hand, right, so the transparency can be helpful for everybody to see what's happening on chain, but on the other hand, it also gives attackers a lot of opportunities to launch their attacks. That's why we see these front-running attacks, and then there are other attacks where attackers can exploit vulnerabilities and so on. So with a better, with a system that can better protect the user's privacy, it can also help reduce or eliminate some of these like front-running type of attacks and so on. So here, I think privacy is one thing about helping users and entities protect their sensitive information, but also overall, it actually can help the system to be to prevent certain types of attacks also, which is also another interesting aspect.
Yep, and I know that one thing you guys have pioneered is some sort of economic models for how people can sort of publish and share data on the blockchain. And I'd be curious to hear, in your words, just a high-level understanding of sort of how that works, and how you designed kind of a crypto economic mechanism to have secure data sharing.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. So this also relates to why privacy is important. Again, like in this case, privacy is not just actually about protecting users' sensitive information. Another really important aspect is secure computing. Privacy preserving computation can help users actually maintain control of their data and maintain control of their rights to data. So what's a really unique capability that the Oasis platform can enable is what we call data tokenization. So the Oasis platform, the scalability is one side that they can achieve greater scalability. And another unique aspect of the Oasis platform is that it's the first platform that uniquely combines secure computing and a blockchain distributed ledger. So what this allows us is, for the first time, to actually help establish a new type of assets that we call data assets. So what happens is the blockchain, the distributed ledger, can help provide immutable logs of users' rights to data and their policies of how they want their data to be utilized. And then coupled with secure computing, the secure computing can then enable the data to be utilized in a privacy-preserving way. So for example, the computation can run in a secure execution environments so that the consumer of the data can only use the data within the secure execution environments. It won't get a raw copy of the data outside of the secure execution environment, for example, so that the data can be protected even when it's being used, when it's being computed over. And the data consumer, for example, can now just try to reuse the data without getting permission again. So what this means is that this combination of data and data use policy forms what we call a capsule that essentially enables this new type of asset that we call data assets. So this data asset enables users to maintain control of their rights to data, and also at the same time to enable data to be utilized in this privacy-preserving way, so that even when the data is being consumed by a third party, the user doesn't lose control of the data. So for example, in contrast, in today's setting, if a user wants a third party to utilize their data, the user has to give a copy of their data to the third party. And then once the third party has a copy of the user's data, the user essentially loses control of their data, because then the third party can go take the user's data, do whatever they want with the data, even though they may be bound by contract, but there's no way for the user to actually check and enforce that that contract is actually followed. And hence, what the Oasis platform enables is a completely different way of utilizing data, a secure way of utilizing data, so that the users can still maintain control of their data, even when the data is being utilized by a third party. And with this way, this enables this data asset so that users can actually gain greater benefits from their data. Because if users cannot maintain control of their data, then their data essentially becomes useless, because the third party can now take users' data and make money out of the users' data, and the users will not be able to do anything about it. But now, with this establishment of data assets, users still maintain control of the data, so that when third party utilizes the data, the user can gain more fair compensation from that, so can gain greater value out of it, and the third party will now be able to take a copy of the user's data and just go do arbitrary things with users' data. So with this, so we have a number of use cases. So one is, so for example, today in DeFi, everybody talks about yield farming, talks about liquidity, staking, and so on. But with the data, actually, we can, it's interesting, so with the data asset, we can do something similar, in spirit, in the sense that users can actually stake their data, do data staking, stake their data in a pool that we call a data trust. And as data consumer utilize data in this data trust, they may pay payments into the trust, and users can gain data yield from this trust. And one interesting thing is that for liquidity staking, especially today, given the Ethereum gas fee is so high, so only the larger token holders or the richer ones can actually, in some sense, afford doing this liquidity mining and so on. And also, of course, they can gain more benefits from that as well. But with the data staking, everybody has their data, and each person's data, even though a person may not have a lot of money, but maybe the person, is someone who actually has a rare medical situation and so on, and then that person's data actually can be super valuable. And hence, I think this is also a more democratized way for everybody to actually be able to utilize their data assets in a fair way, and doesn't really matter how much money you actually have. And hence, I think this can really be very, very meaningful for a greater population.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, it can lead to data markets, that are sort of on the blockchain and therefore, global and somewhat trustless and everything. And I was talking about this concept of these sort of on-chain DAOs or corporate structures, right? And I feel like there's an opportunity for these data assets to be used as sort of the core asset base of those DAO-like structures, where you could have different people contribute data into the DAO and then be paid based on sort of how it's all consumed. Because a lot of times, to build a big, robust data set, you might need data from lots of different places.
Exactly.
It's really interesting because, as I was talking about earlier, some of these sort of on-chain DAO-like structures are sponsoring financial products. But in this case, they could sponsor basically APIs to consume data. And the entire sort of, again, quote, business model, I use that term loosely, could be, owned and operated by a set of token holders with these kind of data assets being the product on Oasis. That's
right.
Really
Yes, absolutely. And that's also right. Like we call it data trust or right, this data DAO. I think it's super exciting. And also it helps solve another important issue that we see today. Like a lot of valuable data today sits in data silos. It's very difficult, for example, for medical researchers and so on to gain access to data to do the kind of medical research that they need to do to help find better cures for diseases and so on. So I'm really excited that this type of data trust or data DAO in the future can provide a much better way for users globally to pull data together and to enable better societal benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's pretty impressive the amount of sort of pilots you all have managed to get involved between sort of corporates and the Oasis technology stack. I feel like this data sharing across corporates, the reality is getting them involved in this kind of technology is going to take some hand-holding. And I think you guys have done a great job of sort of getting those folks involved in the Oasis ecosystem and sort of educating them on how Oasis works and what it enables.
Right, yeah, thanks. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm also happy to just briefly share some of the example use cases in here. Exactly like you said, actually, we actually have use cases in both of these two settings that you just mentioned. One is for individual users. We recently, a partner just did a beta launch on our platform in the genomic setting. And so Nebula Genomics, so they actually did a beta launch of their products on the Oasis platform. And this is the first time to enable users to become owners of their genomic data. As we all know, genomic data is some of the most sensitive information for individual, especially given that you actually won't be able to change your genes. And with the Oasis platform's capability, in this case, we can enable users to maintain control of their genomic data, and they can decide how they want their data to be utilized. For example, they can give consent to a third party, like a genomic company, to enable them to do genomic analysis on their data and to provide users the results. And then in this case, the genomic company can run their analysis in the secure execution environment provided by the Oasis platform. And then in this case, they don't get a raw copy of the user's data, so users can maintain control of their data while still benefit from the analysis. So that's the individual user's case. And also, as you can see, as more users join this platform, then the platform can actually build up a big data trust of users' genomic data as well. So users can do data staking of their genomic data into this data trust, and for societal benefits for medical researchers who want to use the genomic data to do different research, then this actually can really be, I think, really be a game changer that can really enable a completely new way for medical researchers to gain access to this data while at the same time still protect individuals' data privacy for their genomic data.
Yeah, and
so,
that's just a fascinating use case, because I think it's sort of conceptually similar to some of the functionality you can get using homomorphic encryption, where you basically have a data set whereby some other party can do machine learning on that data set without ever actually seeing the plain text data.
Right, right.
And to me, it's just fascinating because you have the ability for consumers or corporates to share data to basically a network of analysts who can draw conclusions about that data, but without ever actually seeing the data. And so it's kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of the magic of cryptography that that's possible. But I do think there's going to be lots of use cases in those marketplaces for sort of encrypted data and intelligence, so to speak.
Right, right. Yes, it's really exciting. Right, I'm really excited about the future in that direction. And also going back to your the other usage scenario that you mentioned among corporations. So for example, oftentimes corporations may also need to collaborate together to share data for a certain computation that they may want to do together. But at the same time, the data is very sensitive and different entities may not trust each other. So in this case, we are also really excited that we have a great use case that is actually being developed on the Oasis platform. And this is in collaboration with the Binance that we have announced the partnership earlier. Together, we have launched this Crypto Safe Alliance to bring together different crypto exchanges and other entities in the ecosystem so that the different entities can actually collaborate together to fight crypto frauds by sharing threat intelligence data. But then, of course, as we know that this data is really sensitive, and also the different entities may not trust each other, and hence the Oasis platform really is uniquely well suited to enable such use cases, to enable such sensitive information being utilized in a collaborative computing setting, and still protects the confidentiality of the data, even when the different parties may not trust each other.
Yeah, so I think over this conversation, we've talked a lot about sort of future use cases and what's around the corner with blockchains, as well as what Oasis sort of uniquely enables and what some of those early use cases might be for the Oasis platform. Dawn, is there anything else you want to sort of communicate to everyone ahead of the Oasis Network launch?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think also we talked a little bit about the DeFi side. I think besides this new paradigm of data tokenization that we discussed, also even just to help today's DeFi, I think adding the privacy protection, enabling private DeFi with the Oasis platform. Also, there are lots of really exciting work that's in the pipeline. And also in combination with the scalability and the privacy protection, we can help DeFi to really reach the next level as well. So overall, I think Oasis platform really is the unique platform that provides greater scalability and strong privacy protection. And we are really excited to see the different use cases, in particular new use cases that the platform can provide. And really excited to see the community's strong support on building on the platform as well. Like really excited to be.
And I wonder if we'll see any new DeFi primitives emerge on Oasis where people use data assets as collateral for financial products. When you get sort of this remixing of DeFi with these data assets, I think we might find some very interesting behavior.
Right, that's a great point. So one immediate application that we have been exploring also is that, right, exactly when you have these data assets, so one, it can actually help establish better the credit score or risk score for a user as a borrower. So this actually could help enable applications such as under-collateralized lending. This can actually help bring DeFi, for example, lending and borrowing to the more general population.
Yeah, I suppose you could sort of privately like prove that you had a high credit score without revealing your identity. Tie that to a key and then receive a loan based on that.
Right.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Right, exactly, right. And we have there's some interesting use cases that's being developed on the Oasis platform in mortgage lending as well, how utilizing user-sensitive information to help users to then get better mortgage rates and so on. So there are third-party developers who are building this type of use cases on Oasis platform as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's very exciting, Dawn. I know we're excited to be stakers in the network launch and actually participate in block production in Oasis. And we'll be tracking the ecosystem development very closely to see both how the sort of grassroots hacker community as well as enterprises take advantage of the private data sharing and private DeFi that Oasis enables.
Great. Thank you so much for joining again. It was great talking together.
Yeah, thanks, Dawn, for having me.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right, thanks.